But it gets more encrypted because there actually is another tunnel system that most of the people are not even allowed to go through. And that itself is a 700-foot tunnel that runs under the National Mall between the Smithsonian Castle to the Natural History Museum. It's not open to the public. Most people are unaware of its existence. Supposedly, this maintains maintenance for the two buildings on shared utilities. But there may be something else that they hold underground below the actual museum. And that includes vast troves of certain archaeological findings or discoveries.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 69. Blue, how are you doing?
Very well today, Mike.
Hey, what are we going to talk about today in episode 69?
We'll be discussing about some of the non-governmental UFO organizations. There are affiliated many sorts of organizations out there scattered across the planet. Today we'll be discussing about 3 of them: Russia, Sweden, and the United Kingdom.
I often hear stuff about, on the TV, on ancient aliens and stuff. All sorts of stuff has been going on all over the place for many, many years. So I'm excited to jump into it. Hey, before we get started, though, please make sure you go ahead and click like. Well, first off, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Let me start there. Now, please go like, follow, share, comment, all those fun things. You can always reach out to us on the socials. We do respond. And hey, you can pick up some gear like Blue and I are wearing here. Hit up the link in the comment or in the body there below. Blue, let's get right into it.
Absolutely. First main thing of the non-governmental UFO organizations, Russia, Cosmopoisk. Now, we already know there's several out there, things of a paranormal descent, but Cosmopoisk itself translates into All Russian Research Public Organization, also known as a Space Search. It's a group with interest in UFO, ufology, cryptology, and other mystery investigations. They have gone to inform of many expeditions in the past that have dealt with extraterrestrial activity as well as unusual creatures in the land. The leader that founded this organization is Vadim Chernobov. Formation of it was 2004 All Russian Scientific Organization, their purpose. And one of the expeditions out of several others went into a hitchhike in the 1990s. They made an annual event. They would hitchhike as the main way of traveling. One of the main things that they did, so they're able to gain information from certain areas, being able to gather encryptids. One of the instances that had happened in 1999. Now, we already heard about the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie, but there are similar creatures to that out there. And there are other planes of existence across the planet. They had an expedition to a remote area in a Elmanuk Lake in Ukashia, Sakar Republic, where an underwater monster similar to Nessie has been believed to exist since the 1960s. Hitchhiked to the federal to get to the lake in Ukashia. They collected the results of events into the database. One of the many things that they do, they gather this information, not just with UFOs. They gather it through cryptids, other creatures. They had gathered as well through a landing site, a blast site, a meteorite landing. They have conducted expeditions in the past that had dealt with unusual items and such, including what believed to be a 300 million year old screw. 300 million years old. Think about it. If that ain't extraterrestrial, what is? If that ain't something that's an advanced civilization or something possibly humanoid that had an assistance, you know, they gather all these information. Comes to think about this, people. What's going on here? What are we finding?
Wow. That's crazy stuff. That's kind of like Elon Musk finding there's 6 million people over the age of 130 collecting Social Security. Yeah, I mean, it just blows your mind. How is this possible? How is this going on? I do want to bring one thing to our attention, that that meteorite that you were talking about. Are you talking about the one in 1908, the one in Siberia? It kind of flattened down a giant area of trees and everything. They think that's what happened. Is that, or is it something more recent?
No, they had initially found this to Kaluga. It's in Kaluga. They allegedly found a 300 million year old screw. This is not the same thing.
Wow.
This is deal with the Russian expeditions. You know, they deal with a lot of the expeditions as well through crop circles before humans mess them up. They gather, if they notice anything of unusual paranormal activity, they will gather that intel and go to that area and get the database streams before people mess up those types of things that are deployed there. There are multiple observations of triangle UFOs. They have this crazy lightning slow, mysterious tunnels as well, and possible Lovandra 7 time travel experimentations. So this had to do with a certain ridge in the 1980s, the Cherbear Ridge. There are several other things that the expeditions go through, and people can look it up online on Cosmopoisk. They do explain several other terms that they deal with, and the expeditions are, I believe, still ongoing.
It's, you know, it blows my mind that, you know, when I think of Russia, I think of them considerably like China, where you can't say and do certain things. The government's always involved in your business. I'm surprised they're able to even speculate on this. That leads me to believe that this isn't maybe an underground thing, that maybe there is some secret sponsorship here of the Russian state. What do you think about that?
Well, remember we talked about Chernobyl before and extraterrestrial activity, scientific activity there. You gotta understand a lot of things go on in and around that sector. More than people are aware of, even paranormal, way more. There are other hotspots too that are scattered across the planet that have either UFO, higher paranormal activity, or just a cryptid activity altogether.
Curious stuff, because we keep talking about this disclosure coming and disclosures coming, and it seems every day you turn on the TV, there's more worldwide attention on the possibility of some sort of disclosure, talking about beings and civilizations possibly interdimensionally or somewhere out in space, if there is such a thing. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot there. Wow. The United Kingdom and their research association, is that along the same guidelines? Is that very similar?
Oh, that's a bit different. The British UFO Research Association, BUFA, organization former registered dedicated to helping investigate UFO phenomena in the British Isles. It's reported to have around 1,000 members. Now, it gets interesting because they investigate over 400 cases a year, with the organization supporting 95% of them as hoaxes. But they're not really considered hoaxes. There are very important things that current organization has cooperated and worked with, according to even certain areas in the United States, as well as many other areas in certain other sectors. Now, as it relates to UFOs and gatherings, They had sightings confirmed genuine. 5 UFO was found, claimed to have seen a UFO hovering over the town of Warminster. Admitted it was a hoax, but there have been several other relay to that circuit code, meaning that the area itself may or may not have a certain hotspot. Now, they also had organizations endorsing a film purportedly by the U.S. government showing an alien autopsy at Roswell. You know, they could have encrypted that into something that later on was found to be real. We already know about the Roswell incident. Supposedly a conspiracy theory, which alleges that the 1947 United States Army Air Force's so-called balloon debris recovered near Roswell, New Mexico. Now, that so-called balloon debris was made out of an unknown type of element, an unknown structure. It wasn't considered what they wanted to put out there as a balloon. So, it was actually crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. And some of the components here, including several others, have been utilized as reverse technologies for certain militaries and governments for spacecrafts and or similar technologies itself with aerodynamics. Well, going back to Rufa, though, they have several other outlets that deal with them. They deal with the National Director of Investigations, the British UFO Research Association, and the newspaper The Guardian. Now, The Guardian, and we know about other newspapers and articles out there, you can go and you can get them at stores, and they have all these incidences or these things that, you know, like they're out there, they're behind the scenes. They look like they were to be made fun to look at, but they also have important things encrypted into them. Real important information, like the Enquirer, the Guardian, all similar to the exact code. So they also dealt with UFO, Bob Star, and off-planet convergence, the Australian. They had dealt with Spot Pentagon's fourth alien cover-up, Pentagon and Roswell, just like I explained. Humanoid ants, white balls of light, the Toronto Star. And there's so many other things that coordinate with this association from behind the scenes that actually affiliate with terms that go on and around the sector or out of beyond it.
Sounds very curious. I've seen and heard of these things on TV, and recently I've seen and heard of something very similar to what you're talking about here, somewhat local. And there'll be more on that in the upcoming shows. Trust me, you're going to be fascinated. Blue, is there really a group here in the United States that compares to these people? I know we have MUFON. Is there anything that is that the closest comparison?
Well, there are several out there. I mean, there's MUFON and there's, I believe, Arrow, but I'm not sure if that's the United States or not. All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, International UFO Congress, National UFO Reporting Center, To the Stars. Several organizations.
What I don't want to happen here in the States is, as we getting closer to disclosure and as things start to happen, I don't want there to be a bunch of organizations all of a sudden popping up on the scene collecting hard-earned government tax money. And now we have 19 people doing 28 different things. I'd rather just have it, and I hate to say government involved, but let's get a private entity, you know, under the leadership of someone like Musk. Musk has got a lot going on, but let's, you know, do some sort of committee. Let's do something to move this forward. It seems like I don't know, maybe it's all happening behind the scenes. Is that possible? Everything's already happening behind the scenes. We don't know it.
Yes, everything's unfolding slowly but surely outwards. Area 51 itself is going to end up becoming non-inclusive and in turn into something altogether fundamentally that mankind, well, it's going to unfold into another leeway point. The old foundations of 51 would ultimately turn and coordinate into something that's been collaborated from behind the scenes for many years. One of the reasons why Donald Trump had visited there before and had dealt with the controversy effects of the technologies and the quantum technologies, as well as things circulated through Nikola Tesla.
There we go again. We can't go a show without mentioning Tesla, Musk, or Musk and Tesla, or one of the two.
The COMETA. The COMETA was a nonprofit association formed in 1999 by a group of individuals, including defense experts, with the aim of raising awareness about the UFO phenomenon amongst authorities and the public, chaired by retired French Air Force General. Now, after operating, though, was officially registered as a nonprofit organization under the French law of 1901. It became dormant, however, around 2006. It went quiet after the reports for publication. So the report itself was not widely circulated due to copyright. So the COMETA Association is not vastly as known as the other two we've just discussed about, but they do have things behind the scenes that they still deal with. And some of the awareness of the council that works with this organization, yes, it has gone dormant for a reason. And there may have been an important reason behind that. One of the things, the Angoli UFO Memorial was a monument dedicated to an alleged UFO landing site in the Grotoes forest near Elmanuk, Sweden. Includes a concrete scale model of a flying saucer, for life-size landing impressions on the ground, where we talked about the crop circles. So even with star units, UFO units, with these sightings, those that do land, because of the elevated engine products that they escalate, the amount of energy that it indicates, it can create some type of like imprint when it lands. And the imprint becomes something unusual. Some of these circles may have, if you look at it, and they don't look like a real design, but they just look like just double circled, if that, crisscrossing. It may or may not have been some type of official, like, star unit landing. It may not have, may have just been elevated to that. This itself, yes, the same thing. Built in September 1972, governing body through the Swedish National Heritage Board.
It's again curious that you have it's like when you look at ancient times, the pyramids. There's pyramids all over the place, or ancient artifacts, and the same looking artifact here and in 3 other places around the world, and now we have all these countries with similar organizations all pointing in the same direction here. I find it very fascinating that people who may not communicate with each other are all chasing after the same thing, or all witnessing the same occurrences. And it doesn't make me feel as crazy sometimes, because, you know, what we talk a lot of stuff about people or civilizations from other places or other times or other dimensions, and we just casually talk about it like it's no big deal. And there's a lot of people who will look at you like you're crazy if you even mention one of those words, let alone have an in-depth discussion about it. Wow, that's crazy.
Absolutely. It's out there. It may be crazy, but it is really out there.
I'm excited. What an exciting time we live in. Are we ready to move on?
Yep, absolutely. The Smithsonian, the underground tunnels. So, an excavation, 30 foot deep, was chamber was recently uncovered under the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Construction crews found the cistern as a part of an effort to revitalize part of this historic building. Supposedly, people were thinking this is a secret chamber, but it was an archaeological discovery made under the National Mall, and they opened up a large cistern. So supposedly 30 feet deep, or remained empty, sealed for more than 120 years. It gets into this, what goes on there? What did they hide? And even if they didn't hide, what's been there before they placed these foundations of these buildings in the first place? And what the reasons why they even maintain it. You know, they said that it offers a neat glimpse into the past, but it gets more encrypted because there actually is another tunnel system that most of the people are not even allowed to go through. And that itself is a 700-foot tunnel that runs under the National Mall between the Smithsonian Castle to the Natural History Museum. It's not open to the public. Most people are unaware of its existence. Supposedly, this maintains maintenance for the two buildings on shared utilities. But there may be something else that they hold underground below the actual museum. And that includes vast troves of certain archaeological findings or discoveries. And if they do not, they very well have it in other places.
Yeah, we've talked about underground tunnels and networks being used for evil purposes, for being used for illegal activity, for being used for just mind-blowing things that you can't even imagine, that I don't even care to talk about. That's how disgusting these things are. But at the same time, you gotta wonder, why are there so many tunnels everywhere? Are they really interconnected? Is it just one step below us on the surface, yet a few steps above the Agarthan realm? Is there a real activity going on underground at all times in a lot of these places that we're just not aware of? Is this is more common than we think, is what we're saying?
Yes, absolutely. Some of it's just to keep the public from its own safety because they have utilities and other things underground. Others is they have really old archaeological findings or other vast differences that humans should not know about just yet, that they want to keep preserved and maintain. And then they want to leak it slowly out there, and eventually, possibly, you can have a certain area to go through, to be able to explore, that they would allow because they have dealt with all that. They have got what they wanted out of it. It happens. It's happened in Egypt before when they find certain areas. The scientists, whoever that excavate those, they block it off to the public if it's something very interesting until they really find out what's going on with it. And ultimately, if it's something altogether that they don't want the public to know, they just completely take it away.
We talked about it time and time again. You got to drip stuff out to the general public because you can't just unload on them in one fell swoop because people's minds will be blown. I think back to when the JFK assassination took place. You know, they didn't have the expedience in news networking and the World Wide Web and all this ways to instantly communicate with people around the world. So information went out a little slow. It went out in chunks, which was somewhat palatable, but at the same time, people still kind of lost their minds. And I think I'm going to lose my mind if I don't see and hear what's going on with the Vatican archives, because that's another whole series of shows that we could talk about, I'm sure.
Yes, the present name Vatican Apostolic Archives dates back to when the institution was founded in issues of Paul V. From the mid-17th century, however, titled Vatican Secret Archives, sometimes known as the Vatican Apostolic Secret Archives, was commonly used, stressing the particular nature of this collection of documentation consists of the concentration of one place of several archives. Although that there are other places scattered abroad that have several types of other archives that deal with the Vatican. the divine, those that relay between them and the higher extraterrestrials of several races, those that have maintained certain code of ethics between the inner and outer earths and realms. The Vaticans that hold a hierarchy to maintaining a certain code of ethics and distribution scenes for the planet itself. Possible relay and manifestation process to maintain themselves between the equity, what they deal with, and the Illuminati, which to reasonable format speeds between both have to run on a better conjunction to the planet than what the severed portions are currently doing on a negative stance. There is a priority speed that, yes, they hold things that are hidden from the public, but they're also supposed to maintain proper order too for the planet because of what they have been, what most have been withheld, but they do hold. Some of the libraries that they have are so vast that it runs in miles underground, and they hold vast troves of archaeological finds as well as technologies, including certain portions of the elixir of life.
That's wondrous to me, because there's also theories that with their own banking system that they have, their Vatican Bank, that's where a lot of gold ended up after World War II or during World War II even. And that's always one of those theories. But I want to know what they're holding back. I want to know why they have miles of stuff. And I want to know what information that they're not allowing me to know, because obviously, if I don't know certain information, you don't know what you don't know. And if I don't know certain things, I'm going to continue on as if. But if you disclose certain information, I may think differently, or my faith may be challenged at that point. And I get it. But it doesn't give you the right, I think, to withhold all that information from mankind, especially with how far advanced we are now. These are ancient writings. These are things from our past. And yes, they may disclose something different than we've been taught all along. But that's another whole show and another whole series. So I'm very interested to find out more about this stuff. Yeah.
Well, they do have their secret passages as well. The Paseo di Borgo, a fortified corridor that connects Vatican City to Castel Sant'Angelo, was built in the 13th century, used by popes to escape danger. So they use it in 1527 to escape the sack of Rome. They have grottos, the Vatican grottos. They have underground areas beneath St. Peter's Basilica that contains tombs of popes. Popes again, here we go with the divine mix. Church leaders and other important figures. It also has ancient art and relics there, including areas that supposedly are cut off to the public. Tomb of St. Peter, located beneath the main altar of the Vatican Basilica. They have the Necropolis, the Vatican Necropolis, a Roman burial site that includes tombs of enslaved people, freed people, artisans, decorated mosaic statues, bas relief frescoes, and inscriptions itself. They run on royal hierarchy lines, and most of the Vatican, if not 95% of its walls, keep and maintain that throughout the many thousands of eons that they have learned certain knowledge. And yes, one of the reasons why they keep these vast troves of libraries from people, from the public, so that certain knowledge doesn't go into the wrong hands, and is maintained by the higher orders that were given to it by those from the Teros and Talos societies of the inner and outer or guardian realms, as well as the outer dimensions.
Wow. That's fascinating stuff. I hope I can get over there and get underground with a camera.
Washington, D.C. Doesn't supposedly have an underground city, but has a complex network of underground tunnels and passageways. Now, these tunnels serve in many purposes, including transit, government, sewage, and steam. Now, there is a vast rumor of an underground city, and I wouldn't be surprised. Because we already know about the certain type of drill system, kind of similar to the boring systems with Elon Musk. These vast networks that could just create huge tunnels. Now, they have providing shelter and transportation also to the nation's leaders. That is true to an extent. So if anything on a catastrophe happens, they already have an underground bunker in and around certain areas of the White House, D.C., and as well as the scientific laboratories and things that are off, that are not allowed for the public itself. And usually you have to have some type of pass to be able to go to the underground networks there in D.C. altogether. They have tunnels in Washington, D.C., the DuPont Underground, Inert Performance Space and Old Trolley Tunnels, the White House to Treasury Building Tunnel that connects the White House and the Treasury. But there's also another connectivity that has to do with the vast types of scientific research, as well as bunkers and troves of possibly treasure in certain areas, in areas of that certain leaders and those of the higher elites can maintain themselves underground. They also have transits on priority stream that certain governments can go back and forth and be able to carry things without the noticing of the eyes itself from the normal public. They have the Library of the Congress book conveyor tunnel, transported books to the Capitol at 600 feet per minute. So some of those books, maybe even half or more, may be important documented things that the public are not even allowed to see. They have the secret federal tunnel system, a network of tunnels that connects the Capitol, Supreme Court, Library of Congress, and the White House bunkers.
Wow.
And like I said, you have to have a pass to get through to these areas.
Yeah, I'm sure there's certain safety protocols. I'm sure there's certain situations that we don't know about that involve the president or some other influential members of our government should need be. I don't mean a fake J6 thing. What I mean is under a real disaster situation or a real threat situation. Wow. That's a lot to think about. There's all sorts of stuff going on right under our feet. Crazy.
Yep, and I believe the name of the thing that you would need to even get into certain areas underground is a smart trip card into the metro system, monument. Some of these tunnels are so cavernous, though, 600 foot long. Each station could easily fit into a monument itself. So to be able to get it, like I said, you need a Star Trek card, and usually it's those that they're allowed to reinforce in certain areas. Other areas you need an even more encrypted card or type of ID to be able to access at all, because that they have very encrypted things in there. And yes, they do have underground areas that deal with extraterrestrials in Washington, D.C. They have foundations that maintain that as well.
Nice.
Why wouldn't they? It's close to the president.
Right? Exactly. Musk needs to go talk to his friends real quick. Hey, look what I got. I got stickers here. We're going to be giving these away here. So stay tuned. We'll find some fun ways to give these away. If you can't wait, there are some to purchase in the links with the rest of the merch below there. Blue, let's go ahead and talk about the SCP Foundation.
Yes, SCP-437, summer of '91. This is an interesting thing. So it's supposedly a large grove of trees located in Camp Lakewood, Illinois, USA. Contains at least 64 instances of SCP-47A. Now, SCP-47A are numerous trees common to North America. Each instance has several cankers and typical interior structures. And rather than sap, it contains significant amounts and quantities of human blood. It was discovered by the Foundation in 2011, 20 years after the summer camp's closure. Employment records for Camp Lakewood have not been found, and all persons who attended Camp Lakewood during the summer of 1991 are persons of interest and are still currently at large. Supposedly, they had a Foundation member that had dealt with an interview from one of the entities that was here at that camp that attended it. And they had found a match to the Foundation hospital record. So they brought this entity in, this girl. When they had dealt with the interview, they had asked her about the camp. When did she go there? She said she was 15 years old. What do you remember? She remembers that it was an amazing place. It was sad to go, especially when we found out it was closing. They made many friends. They asked if he had found any strange trees in the back. It's just south of it, 2 kilometers, that she was familiar with, and she said, sure, they all were. And she was laughing about things. They said they've been supposedly ghost stories and stuff told around the campfire. I asked if she ever went there, and there was silence. She said nothing, and she said, oh, sorry, never went there, too scared. But sometimes I really miss the place. And supposedly after the interview, she escaped custody by presumably anomalous means, an unknown means. So any investigations found all PUIs associated with SCP-437 have been recently reported as missing. Now, from what this is and the coordinates, it is linked up to another SCP-2571, CraggleWood Park. It's a dimensional nexus point of the receiver itself, the DNA structure of the receiver being intact with the frequency drive of some type of anomaly from another dimension. And that can in turn make the person and or entity go missing or be able to traverse between one dimension and the other, but it would affect that person. And that goes into CraggleWood Park 2571. It's a recurring childhood memory of a non-existent theme park. It's estimated the world's 0.5% of the world's population is affected by it. However, recent evidence suggests the number may be growing. And it appears to be more common in adults raised as an only child. So it's a bit different from the park, what the camp itself, but it's similar because it is a dimensional nexus point that insinuates between the DNA structure, and it could categorize through consistent details of the entity itself and presumably what happened there. It features numerous characters primarily centered around anthropomorphic varieties of trees and plants. So, unlike the trees itself, which had human DNA and blood in it, these more or less has entities that coordinate into the trees and affect the way the mind's perceiving it. Can draw others in. Supposedly features only one ride carousel, although children accompanied the subjects boarded this ride, subject cells did not. So it's interesting because there are dimensional access figures that people are not well aware of. This is considered a class safe paradigm shift, though.
It's kind of crazy. So what we're saying is the one we let off with here, 437, that one inside this tree, this living vessel, if you would, I guess it has human blood.
Yes.
And the
DNA
other one
structure from. Go ahead.
No,
Proceed.
we have these 2 things here that we talked about. The 437, that one has actual human blood in it. Yet the second one, 2571, is a means of transport. It's like a portal. It's like a way to get around.
Well, the ones 2571 is a recurring childhood memory, more or less. But there are certain trees and figures of trees represented in it that may have a insinuated link to the other descriptive SCP. There may be a dimensional link up to those children units between that. Now, it's mainly the subjects afflicted, though, with 257 were initially responsive to anesthetics, but memories regarding CraggleWood will particularly surface once treatment ceases. So CraggleWood has anything to do with the trees there, but CraggleWood is also a park. So it runs to 2 different outlets, but the trees that between that part may have to simulate with the other descriptive mode of the other SCP itself. They're linked in a way. Yeah, there's a dimensional link.
That's crazy.
So,
and again, I like talking about the SCP. I've had people from both sides that I've talked with that say, "Oh, that's a mythical thing. Oh, that's a game." You know, I've talked about it before. If you want to hide something from people, hide it in plain sight. So don't think that some of this or all of it is not real. It's real on many levels. What else?
I could say one thing, Mike.
Go ahead.
I could say one thing though. Watch the movie Men in Black. The blobfish.
Yeah.
They said it was an alien. It later came out in real life, and they found something just like that in the ocean. So think, process that.
Well, we've talked about that time and time again, how they drip things out through Hollywood. This way, when it does hit us, it may not be, that looks like that cute little thing from that show on TV. Yeah, that's what that is. That's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty scary. Tell me about our next SCP.
Class Keter, SCP-510, Soft Death. Kind of scary what goes on with this. Now, they're in an effective substance that is fully difficult to understand and identify. It's a form of microorganism or vanadite, and it appears to be surrounded by a field that causes a blurring effect, even at a high magnification. Now, what gets interesting with this, it has a way to infest soft surfaces such as fabric, feathers, hair, or foam, with the ability to remain dormant in such substances for years. If it does encounter delta waves, typically emitted by humans entering sleep, it will activate and begin to infest any nearby organic life. The infestation follows by 5 different types of categories. And those categories steadily get worse to the point of completely consuming the individual itself. And so it takes about 4 to 6 days of infestation until death.
So it is kind of like what you had mentioned before with the blob. It's kind of like that. It just absorbs things.
Well, it appears to refer mammalian life over anything to the infestation, primarily human beings. They are currently trying to research its life function and support. High heat and highly acidic chemicals have been able to dissolve, though, the particles of it. So they are fundamentally finding a way to resolve any current occurrences that could affect humankind. Dissolved particles leave behind no detectable residue. Now, the stages, when it does enter human and goes into this type of sleep, it starts with stage 1 infestation. Exhaustion, fatigue, sleepiness, general listlessness, itchy eyes, and general head pain come with the symptoms. And it begins to form a sting-like extrusions, which anchor into the skin. And it grows into it, contacting all major organs and systems within an 8 to 24-hour period. There's a stage 2 initial manifestation, symptoms of a deep coma, pillow formation on the body from the SCP, progressive invasion of biological systems, nervous, cardiovascular, respiratory. It forms large pillow-like growths on the body, and the growths are warm and emit a soft light. So, at first it's comforting for the person, but really it isn't. It's digesting from the inside out. It's the texture is a microfiber plush. They sleeps it into a deep coma, and they become totally unresponsive at that time to any inside, outside stimuli. They'll start to take over the biological system, causing all activities, even oxygen, pass through the growth before returning to the subject. Stage 3, full manifestation, the dependence on SCP for all biological functions, bonding of the skin with it. It takes full control of all biological functions of the organism. Damage to the growths will result to the immediate death of the host, as the growths are now performing all biological functions. Stage 4, conversion, rapid growth of SCP will reduction of host physical mass. So it starts affecting the mass of the entity, the person. affecting the tissues, organs, and the brain. The host brain will enter a deep sleep at this time, deep dream sleep. It will compromise the basic structure of the body, absorbing all organs, skins, bones, muscles. It will begin to become starting to be reduced, the mass itself, to 1/10 of the initial size. Activity at this time will initially located in contentment centers, with activity starting to shift into fear and alarm to the human host. And by stage 5 is the resolution and sporing. So the absorption of the remaining individual breakdown is tissues. It absorbs the remaining tissues, and including the brain, over a period of 12 to 14 hours. Highly elevated of brain activity happens around this time, including extreme fear and paranormal and pain. Nothing you can do because you're totally discombobulated from working at all with your body code. By that time, it takes up the rest of the individual, breaks it down into particles, and the particles will then float back into the air until making contact with another individual again.
Wow. Please tell me there's only one of these that we know of, and please tell me it's contained and I have nothing to worry about.
As far as I know, this type of incident is contained, but they have ways to getting rid of the organism, like I had said, with certain scientific means if they have to.
Yeah, I would think something like this we'd want to study more, not just kill it off if we can help it. I mean, who knows what we could learn from stuff like this. This is crazy. I love that we talk about this stuff. It really opens up your mind. And again, I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's up. Just listen. Just open up your mind a little bit and you might learn something. I learned that a long time ago. Hey, are we ready to talk about the Federation and the Space Force?
Mm-hmm. U.S. Homeland Security news. Update. Doge. Next target. Fort Knox Gold Reserve. U.S. gold reserves last audited in 1974 remain shrouded in secrecy. Elon Musk's recent query sheds light on decades of opacity. It's time for a full accounting of our gold at Fort Knox. What's going on there? How much is even there? What's been hidden from society? You know, the humankind as a whole need to get back what was lost from them. Need to start making a fundamental way of their currencies and where they're going. And looking into the depth of the actual things that are being hidden. Trump fires head of federal election panel, but she won't leave. Go figure. Some of these people are just going to be stubborn as hell and they're not going to want to move. But they're going to eventually have to move or tell us something better, because you wouldn't be firing them in the first place unless you have a good darn reason, and they did something really stupid.
That's
common sense.
I'm not laughing at the situation because it's not funny in a way, but it's so ridiculous. A lot of times, a lot of these things we talk about that are really going on, I could write it on a script. I could do everything I'm supposed to do to make it into a film treatment or what have you. I could present it to Netflix or Hollywood and they would go, no way, that's unbelievable. You don't get fired from your job and then just refuse to leave. That doesn't, my mind is blown. That's crazy.
And then we have Gulf of Mexico turning into the Gulf of America. That's another thing. Look on maps. They have shifted that recently.
I like it.
Texas. Yep. Texas County approves holding an election to make SpaceX's Starbase its own city. Interesting.
I think that's good. I think that's perfect. That's like what they did here in Florida with Disney for a while. They allowed them their own autonomy. They had their own emergency services, their own sewer systems, their own electrical power. They had all that stuff. They incorporated all that stuff into their projects. Well, that came at a cost because they weren't going to pay for the public services they weren't going to use. So that reduced their taxes. And then over time that became a fight because Disney's so big and controlling, and there's no reason for them not to pay their fair share of taxes. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. So let me just understand, is that what you're saying here? We're talking about something, are we heading toward that?
Making it a starbase?
Well, making it a self-sufficient city. Is that
Absolutely.
what you're talking about?
I mean, absolutely. If we're going to make things sufficient, we got to start somewhere. I would love to see this whole planet as a whole move into some type of space age where we can coordinate ourselves outwards, because humans need to progressively make themselves a better species. You can't keep moving backwards. And that's why Elon was, he wants to motivate the exoplanetary systems to be able to cooperate on levels the humans will never even fathom. But they have to get it together, and laws have to be made, and the right people have to make the proper code of ethics here and make it safer as a whole for this planet. So when we start going on to other systems as a species, when humans do, they are able to have the techniques and the laws and the standards to doing it, because you go into other planets, you're not going to face just yourself. You're not the only ones out there. I guarantee you that there will come a time where things will be opened up to the public. But when that time comes, the public has to be as a whole, not provide themselves fear, panic, mayhem, but have an understanding of the plateaus of the dimensions and the things that go on behind the scenes.
It's crazy.
I'd love to see. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I didn't mean to totally run past the gold thing in Fort Knox with Musk, but to me, those two things and the last thing you said are related. And what I mean by that is, the Federal Reserve in Fort Knox, there hasn't been an audit there since 1974. So
right.
What if Musk goes in? What if Musk goes in and audits and there's no gold there, like some speculate? Or let's say there's a very finite amount of gold there, that it's not like so much it's hard to count or whatever. Or let's say it is all, no matter what it is, you can't just say it, because you could start a problem. You could start a panic. If he comes out and goes, man, all that gold is gone, then everybody's like, where's the gold? Then I think society, civilization collapses at that point. Does that sound right, or does that not sound right? That they should be careful and very guarded as to how they disclose what the end result is there. I mean, I want transparency. But
there's a potential of such gold may not be documented as it was back then. Now there may be far less than what there was. And as well, if that's the case, there still needs to be some type of financial stability and certain laws that need to be motivated for mankind. So they're not having, especially in this country itself, a total turnover and flip over that turns into something bad.
Right.
Eventually making priority of what has been taken and see what can be manifest next and what needs to be managed. If stuff was taken from mankind and hidden, they need to get and delve into that information and see what's going on. And then start next on the scenario of what can be repaired, what can be healed, what we can do as a whole.
That's great. That's good stuff right there. Let's move on to the ET mystical creature of the week.
The Elmanuk. The Elmanuk are tall and slender with an appearance they initially suggest fragile. They are a fitness race, and they have large eyes, which often shielded by dark protective lenses common among gray races. So their characteristics are mixed in from the constellation of Grotoes, their home planet, in the star system Gleason 832. They are an older race, much older, and they're approximately 16.2 light years away from Terra Earth itself. Now, they have two genders supposedly, and we know that several other star races of gray do not pose that, but this type do. But their capacity is a little bit different than in humans, capable of switching gender when necessary by activating a womb in their stomach, the males. So it's different, obviously, than the humans, but they are able to breathe. And go ahead.
They look a little to me like the mate tree from the one photo you sent, and then from the other, the one that's obviously drawn, I found it very curious that there's a triangle shaped UAP up in the air there. To me, that means that's their mode of transport, is what it means to me, but that's crazy.
We just talked about a triangle UFO ship too in one of the organizations. So their numbers have dwindled over time, though. So their influence remains significant, including upon this planet. And they're once active in the galactic diplomacy. They prefer a more retiring role, though, intervening in the Galactic Council of the Federation only when absolutely necessary. Their impact on galactic politics is exemplified by the creation of the Council of Artemis in the famous adage, 5 universes of the 2,500 species, one race. The interactions with Terra made a mobile visit in 2002 and contributed to the preparations for the Great Awakening. Hint, hint, here we go all over again, the Great Awakening. All right, and we already know there's several starseeds out there like myself that have incorporational codes to these beings or several other star beings. And the involvement of motivating humans next stage. So they remain behind the scenes and they have cooperated with certain governments before. And they are resemblant to the Arcturians though, but they are not. They maintain their unique identity and purpose at the utmost times. Their spacecraft, it represents, characterized by an elegant V shape, reflecting their advanced technology and commitment to harmony and balance in the cosmos. And that's what this race does. Unlike plain triangular vessels, all their ships possess a distinct elegance and sophistication. So they're like the triangular types, but there is more V. So it's kind of like the capsulization codes that go in between, like the main port, the port of it, where the entity runs it is in the front, the cockpit, the very front of the V shape. And then they have stability board units that maintain code of ethics to living habitats on the sides. They have coordinators underneath that could distribute certain types of technologies, including weaponized systems. They create an anti-gravity propulsion system and aerodynamic scene as well that could go into different dimensions, locking in at once.
Wow. Sounds fascinating. I love it when we talk about these creatures. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's wonderful that we have someone of your knowledge, someone of your ability to kind of decipher things out for us. I really enjoy that a lot. Wow. Is this a group that maybe has worked with our government, you think?
I have said that there are affiliated sources behind the scenes with certain military proactive conjunctures of government stability. They maintain the peace and code of ethics with several other star races behind the scenes for the Great Awakening. They have dealt with other elevated effects in the past through certain timeline maneuvers for many eons too.
Wow. Awesome stuff. And just like that, we are out of time. Blue, thank you once again. Awesome stuff. Episode 69 in the books. Folks, remember, go ahead and click like, subscribe, follow, all that fun stuff for us if you would. We do respond on the socials, and if you want any gear that we have here, look down in the description there. You'll find a link for that too. Blue, wonderful stuff. I look forward to episode 70, another monumental episode. All right.
Absolutely, Mike.